Welcome to the Conscious Dominance Podcast, where Andrew and Eric, two dominant men in dom sub relationships, discuss how we approach our dominant roles from a conscious and loving place, and what we learn about ourselves through the deep intimacy that these power exchange dynamics make possible. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Andrew,
I'll hit record. Hang on one second. Let me make sure the recording is going. All right.
Hi.
We're good.
Andrew, it's good to see you today.
Hello.
It's always
good to see you, buddy.
Brings my heart a little bit of a joy to witness you across on the other side there.
Somewhere from across the country.
Across the country. South of you. So, yeah, not too far from you. You know, today I was thinking about these moments that we have, these pivotal moments that we have with our woman that make or break our day or make or break the next moments, and how important it is in these moments that have that can create momentum, that we show up in a certain way in those moments. And the gravitas of these moments that we think are insignificant moments, and the moments that I'm speaking of are pretty much any time that our woman comes to us in a state that's at all in a way that we don't necessarily perceive to be orderly or clean or structured, or it's some disruptive moment where she's bringing a disruption to us. She's feeling disrupted. How do I, in that moment, receive her? How in that moment do I hold her? Do I contain her? Do I feel her? Do I listen to her? Those moments that's everything. And everything that I've talked about with you, that you've talked about with me, is the foundation that allows us in those moments to show up in what we would call conscious dominance. And those moments is where we get to live it. Those moments are where we get to be in that space. And it takes a certain pre-paving, an energetic pre-paving of those moments to not make those moments about me. If I make it all of a sudden about me, then all of a sudden we got two storms hitting. She's bringing weather, and then I've got weather, and we've got more weather. And if that
are
weather,
you just like in my life? Are you just in my life right now? Oh my God, that is so exactly the mistake I've made a couple times here in the last couple of weeks.
It plays out, doesn't it? It crazily plays out. And if she's bringing weather and then I bring weather, we can do that, but there's consequences. There's consequences to it.
Yep.
And if she brings weather and I'm able to just hold that, be the lighthouse, be the rock, be the foundation, there's something completely different in that field. I'd love for you to run with it. Sounds like you've got some examples. Talk to me. I've got some other things to say about this, but I would love for you to run with it a little bit here.
Well, I'll be glad to share like just a real life example without getting excessively specific, but you know, this has happened a couple times in the last couple of weeks and what it is, at least in our experience, when Dawn gets into any kind of a triggered state, I think that's kind of what you're talking about with bringing weather.
Yeah.
Right. Where I'm dealing with not with her authentic self, not with her soul, but I'm dealing with some reaction that is born out of some kind of pain, that's born out of some kind of fear, that's born out of some kind of resistance inside of her. As soon as she is in that at all, I'm not talking to her. I'm not communicating with her. And the only thing that we can do the only thing I can do when she gets in those states is to just listen, just literally receive her and really do nothing, which is the hardest fucking thing. And it sucks the most, because when she's in that state, if you love her, you want to help her,
Right.
but you can't, like, there's no helping her. And I've had two moments in the last couple of weeks where, well, actually more than that, there were several yesterday, but I'm just lumping all of yesterday into one of, like, when she gets into these triggered states, everything else that we were doing, all the ways we were communicating, every other piece of what was happening is not what's happening anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, for me, the pivotal moment, so to speak, in the way that you were talking about this, is to recognize she's starting to contract. She's starting to react. I am now in a conversation with her fear. And if I
Mm-hmm.
continue to try to be in a conversation with her authentic self when I'm actually talking to her fear,
Mm-hmm.
I am battling against her fear. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm not talking to the same person that I was anymore. I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking to the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, when I hear you say pivotal moments, for me, this is the thing. It's recognizing when she is not in herself anymore, and and responding as such,
Mm-hmm.
and knowing that at this point now she needs to be met where she's at,
Mm-hmm.
not talked to, or, like, I'm not even in the same conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I might be better off just walking away, being like, love you, babe. Because, and sometimes that's what I need to do a better job of doing, because I'm still trying to lead her.
Right.
And all of a sudden now the fear is digging in its heels and pushing back where it wasn't 30 seconds ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think there are times when it's appropriate to walk away, especially if that her trigger is bringing on your trigger and you're not going to add anything other than more trigger or more weather. But I also have
Mm-hmm.
seen, for me, there are some scripts that are really helpful in these moments where she's got some weather. Lately, I've done something that's really counterintuitive to every man that's out there, which is literally to say nothing and just go, hmm, 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 hmm,
Yeah.
hmm,
Yeah.
hmm. And you're literally no words. You just make some little noises and that, but be present so she feels your presence. Don't get triggered by her trigger and just let her bring whatever's coming your way and let her just kind of bring that out. And then, And another one that works great for me, the script, wow, mm, just wow. Or I see you. Wow. That must have been tough. Hmm.
So how do you recognize for you when it's time to flip into that?
Well, I notice if she's what's interesting is this is what's really powerful for me is I can feel her being triggered. So as soon as I feel her being triggered and it brings up my own, this is why all that work leading up to this is so important because then I feel myself getting triggered. I'm like, oh, it's not appropriate for me to be triggered. I don't need to be triggered in this moment. Create a little space there. That registers to me to be like, not a time to solve anything, not a time to come in guns blazing saying, hey, because usually she's upset about something. Usually of late, there's been some family issues, stuff with
Mm-hmm.
family. Let's just put it that way.
Yep. Same over here.
And so, and those things, I just need to be there. And I need to be rock solid presence. I need to be her home base. I need to be her family. I need to be the safe space that she never actually had when she was little. So it's triggering for her because she's feeling with the frequencies that she didn't was able to receive. So I need to be just like a space for her to bring that to that doesn't affect me. She wants to feel that her voice, her impact, her weather is not causing me to have weather. She needs to see that I'm like, boom, I got you. But it's again, like we've talked about, it's not about closing off my heart where I'm just stoic to the degree that I'm not even there or present. How do I become present with that? Hold her so she can feel me feeling her and still have an equilibrium to it. Hmm. And a lot of times what she's needing is my body. She needs my body. She needs my physicality. And I have found that if I can be, and then I can go over and grip her or grip the back of her neck and the hair right here, ground it, pull her a little bit, kind of yank her, hold her, just kind of without, and that's it. And not it going anywhere, just letting it be, And that's another thing that it's been really helpful for me of
Mm-hmm.
late is to have moments where there's some tension, some polarity, and that's it. It's not polarity for me to do anything. She wants to feel that I'm not doing things to get to the next stage. She wants to feel that I'm present with her right there. And what happens is it'll wash away and it shifts the energy. And so that becomes, she wants to feel that I'm not giving up on her, that I'm holding her, that it's not too much, that she can just keep bringing more and more and more. And then as the dust settles, there might be an important place for me to offer, hey, here's what I see. But that's after the dust has settled.
Yeah.
And that's, unless it's
This is
urgent,
what I,
and
yeah,
rarely it's urgent.
this is what I, right. It feels more urgent in the moment than it actually is in reality.
Right.
Right. What I tell guys in this when I'm coaching is that I use, and by the way, to point out the fact that I don't look at myself as being perfect at this. I still fuck it up. I still fall down and make mistakes just like everybody else does. I've been on this path for a long time. I make a lot less of them than I used to, but I still do. And this is me violating the principles that I teach people when I coach them when this has gone poorly a couple times here over the last couple weeks, is when she's in that state of expressing and when you've picked up that she's triggered and that you're not talking to the same woman that you were a minute ago, that you're talking to the triggered version of her,
Mm-hmm.
to go into your head and say everything that I think about whatever she's saying, I will share next week.
Mm-hmm.
I'll share it with her, but I'll share it next week.
Mm-hmm.
And not that you're actually going to wait a week, but for me, when I do this, it puts the space in between what's happening right now and when I'm going to speak up and share whatever I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, I'll bring whatever I have to say next week, which is like, in reality, it's just like sometime later when it's appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
But when I tell myself next week, there's like no urgency to it. We'll get around to it. And then I can just like step back and just be in that receptive state like you're talking about, to just, the mm-hms and the yups and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. But it's really what you're talking about. It's just fucking listening to her.
Yeah.
Like actually just listening.
And it's not listening like, oh, I heard what you said. It's listening in a way where she can feel that she can keep bringing stuff and it doesn't fuck with you. I am not here being like, oh shit, I got to solve this right away so I feel better. But how can I hold her in a way so that energy, that moment can feel where she feels like she's safe to be able to express whatever's coming her way. And then if I can see and feel in my thought and in my way, can I transform that when she's bringing me her shit, her stuff, her sadness, her tears, or her anxiety? Can I see that as a compliment? Can I see that that means she trusts me? Can I see that she trusts me to be able to hold that? Can I not make it as a oh fuck, stop it, like I don't want to hear that anymore. Can I make it into something and transform that? And that's what I have been able to do. And what's interesting is as I'm able to do that more and more, she increases what she brings to me more and more. So can I see that her storms are a sign of her being more and more in her feminine, more and more her being in her surrendered state, more and more where she hasn't in the past. Rachel's not, she's been the rock. She's been the solid one. Rachel's been the person that's been there for her family. She's been the person that's been there for all of her clients, for all of her people, she's got to be able to have a one place that she
Mhm.
can come to where she doesn't have to be worried about how what she's bringing affects that person. Because right now, every single person, she is discerning in when and how and where to bring what she might have to bring. And she doesn't even bring it to them. So much so because they're not safe to do it, because they make it about them and it impacts them negatively. And they can't hold space for her. They can't show curiosity into really understanding who she is and where she's been through and what she's going through. And I'm finding that more and more she's able to bring that to me. That's right there to me what the submissive is. That's it. That's the point. This is not the submissive that just does whatever we tell her to do. That's the old, like she's done that, can do that, but that doesn't generate any growth for her. It doesn't generate her health. It doesn't generate her evolution. Her evolution and her health is dependent on and proportional to her voice and her power and her stepping into her authenticity and her truth. And when she's able to utilize that and state her voice and state what's happening and really be in that true place, she then is stepping into more and more of a surrendered, submissive state that is energetically just supple.
Let's talk a little bit about how that's a paradox. Because
That is 100% true. That
like
is a paradox.
what I
A paradox.
both of these things are true. There's two ducks here. We got to talk about both of the ducks. The On one hand, when she's in that triggered state, she is living in her fear. She's living in her pain. She's all of this stuff that is covering up her authenticity. She's identified with it and she's in it. And the what it is that we're trying to lead her to is a place where she can be free of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Where she can be in her authenticity, what is underneath all of that. And so where this is a paradox is, in order to help her transcend this ego self, this triggered state, we have to be in it. Like, we have to go into it with her. We cannot try to take her out of it.
Right.
We have to be able to be there in it with her to allow the energy to move. Because as soon as we try to engage with it, at least this is my experience with Dawn, as soon as I try to engage with her ego self, with her resistance, with her fear, with her pain, that entrenches it.
Oh, yeah.
Even though I'm doing so from
To
a
fix
place
it.
in me that wants to help her.
Right. No.
Yeah. And that's how it gets felt and how it comes across is as fixing. You can have all, and I believe most guys who do this do it with heart. They want to help the woman they love feel better and have a better experience.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that doesn't need to be solved. It needs to be felt. And that's why we have to be able to go into it with her, let her be there in it, and to essentially, by holding it and not engaging with it, that's what helps it go away, not the actual offering solutions.
Yeah, it truly is like the Tao, the Tao, the idea of the way that the effortless way, the Tao Te Ching is a great sort of book that speaks to this, and it's true. This is what it is. This, when you said the paradox, and I was like, that is the word. That is the word. And it wouldn't be a paradox if it wasn't so fucking hard. If it didn't feel so much, especially if her trigger hits something right in you, everything in your body wants to go in, come in, defend or prove or show up. Or, I had an experience where she brought to me something that was an accusatory situation that had nothing to do with what I actually had done. And in that moment, am I in that moment going to be defensive? Or am I in the moment, wow, that must have been, wow, that's how you feel? Hmm. Can I just like let her be in that and not have to defend myself and prove to be right and make it about being, or can I just like let her kind of be in that solid? What's crazy is that as she can feel me not being impacted by that, not being defensive, it just washes. She's like, wait a second, maybe I'm wrong, or maybe the energy it shifts and whatever she's upset about, she no longer is upset about it just sort of dissipates. And so it
Yep.
literally feels like you're letting in the enemy into the gates. Your body, that your inner little boy, the defense mechanisms, and it's like feels counterintuitive. You're like, this is not safe. I'm surrendered. This is where the difference between being surrendered to an energy versus giving up on an energy. Very, very different. Can we surrender to what is there in that moment versus giving up on what is there in that moment? And that's part of the paradox too. It's like to move forward with her and to hold her and to dominate her is to surrender to what is in that moment, to surrender to her energy. It's joining it, but then leading it. You're joining the
Exactly.
energy and then leading the energy. So she needs to feel you feeling that. And then how can you join that and then shift it that way? And it's art. There's an art to it, and it is
Yeah.
paradox.
And the reality is also that the things that trigger her are going to poke you in your
For
triggers,
sure.
because that is, people have heard this phrase trauma bonding before. Well, this is what trauma bonds are.
Right.
It's the fact that we're drawn together because the very things that are the deepest wounds that we carry are going to be set off by each other.
Right.
And it's the through this process that we're talking about here, this being able to surrender to it and engage with it without resisting it, is how you heal those trauma bonds. But everything that triggers you is going to be in that woman, or you wouldn't be in love with her, you wouldn't have fallen for her, you wouldn't have felt the desire for
Mm-hmm.
her to be in relationship with her in the first place. So if you want someone badly, the more that you want someone, the more of an intensity you feel towards someone, the more that person holds everything inside of them to trigger you.
Right. No, 100%. And I think part of it too is attachment styles. And I think it's really helpful to when you talk about trigger is for the man, for me to learn. We've talked about this before, but learn what your attachment styles are. And often what's going to happen is her attachment style and your attachment are going to be beautifully set up to trigger each other. So one of you is going to be one that's going to be more anxious, and the one's going to be more like pulls away, and the one's going to come and pulls away, and then it feeds off of each other. And I've found that myself, one of the things that just in the last several months, I've realized that, oh my gosh, I have an anxious attachment style. And I've always thought of myself as someone who's pushed people away. But it's actually, oh no, I'm pushing people away so I don't feel that anxious attachment. So I'm going to push right there,
Mm-hmm.
not so as not to feel the anxiety that I feel. Whereas Rachel's very much someone who's an island. She sits on her own. You know, she's got herself figured out, knows what to do, can take care of herself, is able to be an island in and of itself. That's the way it appears. That's her. Often when she's in her trauma, she seems like she's got stoic. She's stoic. She seems like she's got her act together. All of this, but as you peel away, you're like, wait a second. That's actually not her design. Her design is not to be an independent island. Her design is not to be completely not needing anyone else. She had to do that because of trauma, because people were not able to be there and supporting. So she had to figure out how to just do it herself. But the body, I've seen her body hold on to all this. You know, we've talked about this before, but the body then holds on to all of this because she's not able to then express it. As she's able to then express her needs and express her pain and express it come out, she's not holding on to it inside of her anymore. And for me, the most helpful thing for me of late is to be like, oh, wait, there's my little anxious guy coming up. Huh, I got you. It's okay. I feel you. And rather than just shoving him down and saying, you're not wanted here, how can he come up a little bit? How can I acknowledge him and honor him and yet not be ruled by him, not letting him run the show, run the case?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And it's this, are we going to be an allowance of what's real in the moment, or are we going to be in resistance to what's real in the moment?
Mm-hmm.
It's really one of the core fundamental questions in all of life. And relationships are one of the most potent spaces in our life to show us where we are not free in this element of life, in this need to control versus the ability to be with whatever is.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the things that relationship can teach us more than almost anything else can. To just
exactly, and
just be with what is.
Exactly, well said. And these moments, I've like you felt in these, recently, where you've had these moments that have been these pivotal moments that have created momentum one way or the other. And I have found that when I show up in those moments and I'm defensive, or I'm proving, or I'm making it about me, or I'm bringing weather to her, she's bringing weather to me. 3 days ago, she came at me with some weather. I had my own weather that I was bringing in. It just flatlined us. It literally puts us both in this state where we're both like, ooh. It feels awful in my body at this point. I've gotten to this point where when we're off, when I'm off, when the polarity's not there, when I'm off and she's off, I can't. It feels so extreme. It's so much more than it ever was before because I'm so used to it actually functioning. It's like when you start really learning to do a sport or a machine or playing an instrument, and when you're playing it even off a little bit, it's just like you can feel it and you can hear it. And I'm starting to really feel that in my body. And the other day when I was off like that, I was like, oh my God, it was really grinding. And we had some time apart, which was necessary, was just the way the day unfolded. I was able to write my ship back up. And then so I was able, when she came back together, but I almost needed her in that moment. I still was a little bit off. I needed her to acknowledge that we were off. I was all I needed. That was literally all I needed, was to acknowledgement that, like, I see you're off, I'm off, it's been a rough day. Like, that's it. And then boom, from there I can shift. And it's funny how that little guy sometimes needs something as clear as that. And Rachel's really good at sometimes seeing, she's always really good, but sometimes what's necessary for me is I need a little support in those moments, those momentous moments. I don't always do it well. And it's really helpful for me. Sometimes I need her little nudging or support in those moments.
We've said this a couple times, and I'd love to unpack this a little bit more. This phrase, making it about me. Because it doesn't feel like in the moment, like that's what you're doing.
Another paradox.
You wouldn't say, right, you wouldn't say, I'm making this about me. It feels like in those moments that I'm trying to be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like I'm trying to guide her. It feels like I have a solution for this thing that you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But when we say that this is making it about yourself, what you're saying underneath all of that is that I'm not okay right now with you feeling this way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I need you to be better.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to change how you're feeling, or I need to fix this situation because it makes me uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. And she feels that
you are not settled, when you aren't solid, when you're not just good in how you are, I don't feel okay. And yes, she feels that. She picks up on the fact that you aren't okay with her being how she is. And then in her system, how she perceives that is, now it's all about him getting me, fixing me, making me different. It's all about him.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like how the egos, they dig in their fucking heels and they start to just push against each other. And then then it's her, I'm not being heard, and you don't think you're being received, and she doesn't value my opinion, and you don't care about my feelings. And that's how we get into these back and forths. And then everybody's making it all about themselves.
Yes, well said. And I think one of the things that I'm finding in the midst of all this is that there is a lot of what is out there for couples therapy is really about two triggered people dealing with each other. And it's like a baseline. It's like crisis and how to get out of crisis. It's almost like ER work, emergency room work. Like, how do we just get so we can even just have sort of this
Mm-hmm.
basic conversation? But what's interesting is what you're talking about, what we're both trying to say is that there's an opportunity where no matter what's going on with her, if you're able to hold this energy and not make it about what you're saying, not make it about me, all the issues of the relationship, they don't really matter. They don't matter. None of it matters. Nothing that she's bringing up matters. Nothing at all. I don't care how extreme it is. It doesn't matter to your relationship if you come from the right energy. If you're coming from the right
Mm-hmm.
energy and you're in the right space and you're able to hold that, you're able to shift momentum. You're able to shift her momentum. You're shifting that energy. She can feel that. And even if you've made a mistake, if I'm able to show up to that and hold her, bringing that, it can quickly shift the momentum. It can shift the dynamic. And to me, that's truly what like being a horse whisperer is. That's what being with an animal that's off, or a kid that's off, or a woman that's off. All of that is this chaotic natural energy. It's even ourselves. Can we do that? Can I do that to myself when I'm off? Can I hold myself in those moments? And I think the radical thing that you're stating and that I'm stating is that these moments that this the feminine brings when she's in that state, that's not a problem with the feminine. That's not like there's something wrong with her. That's actually her being in the feminine energy. And when she's allowed to be in that
Mm-hmm.
energy for the things that feel off, she's going to also be in that energy for the feels that feel amazing and beautiful and transcendent and dynamic but if she can't feel this over here, she's not going to be able to be allowed to feel this over here. And in your system, she wants you to be able to hold both equally well. And I think what you're saying about making it about myself, this can also be said for sexuality. Can I, in those moments when she's having an ecstatic moment sexually, if I'm like, oh, she's having this, I want to yank that and I'm going to be making it about me and my pleasure and not allowing her to have that. That's a great example of where I'm making it about me. Because am I the giver in those moments? Am I the host of those moments? Or am I there trying to yank it and make it about me? And I think this host kind of
Yeah. Am I
energy,
the taker?
the taker, am I taking something in that moment? The
Mm-hmm.
same thing when she's coming with the negative energy or what I term negative. Am I making it about quickly trying to solve her and get out of that so that I can feel better about myself? How can I just be in an equanimity in that moment, whatever the extreme is, I can hold it and feel solid in that. That's what you're speaking about, not making it about me. Let it be what it is over here. Let it be in its ecstatic reverence over here. Let it be in its grief or its anxiety or all of that. And a lot of the anxiety is there because I feel like the feminine, or myself included, are not allowing myself to feel the feelings that I'm having. I'm not allowing myself to have the voice that's inside of myself. She's not feeling like she has a voice. She's not feeling she's had a voice. It's a backlog of her being aware of things and seeing that there's an overwhelm where she's always going to be what Rachel has told me for herself is she's always overwhelmed, always aware of all of these dynamics, always in a state that is got a list of things in her head of an anxiety and anxiousness. This is not just her. This is her, many of the women that I'm aware of, that I've heard that she's aware of. This
Mm-hmm.
is chronic.
The back to your point about these pivotal moments or these momentum building or momentum breaking moments, these can be like half second
Yeah.
little things of just noticing when it's time to switch into receptive mode, noticing when it's time to shut the fuck up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It could be a
Like
look.
that's
Exactly.
yep. It's a look, it's a feel. So you can break momentum really quickly if you continue to try to engage with her ego when she's reacting into a trigger state. But you can
Mm-hmm.
also, if you get good at recognizing, picking up at when she's kind of drifting into that,
Mm-hmm.
and you can learn to flow with that, not only can you continue to build momentum, meaning she gets to set down and feel more and more free, let go of more of this stuff, which means less of it comes up in the future. We have to be with it now if we want less of it down the road, less of the triggered, like defensive reactive states from her. We have to be able to be with it now, and eventually we get less of it that way.
It's true.
And we can build momentum by consistently showing up and being that space holder and being that person who sees her and just almost intuitively knows what it is that she needs from us in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, exactly. And I think one of the things that we were talking about before, but it's, how can we make these moments habits? How can the habit be the consciousness, the dominance, the energetic dominance, the energetic, when we say this energetic dominance, how can we be controlling and dictating the energy of the moment, of the room, not other people? When a guy walks in a room and he's not swayed by the energy that's there, but he dictates the energy. He's the energy dictating. Everyone calms down when they're in that. That's a big shift. How can that be a habit? It becomes a habit by training ourselves to it. And that can only be happen if we have a woman that's inner feminine that's constantly bringing it up. And then I fail, I don't do it so great. And then I try it again, like any habit. It's little moments where we're tested, little places that are seeing that might be a look, like you said, or might be uh, just something in a moment where I'm like maybe talking too much, or I'm not listening, or we're in public and she's needing support, needing me to walk over there, or needing me to see something and be aware of something, or needing her attention to focus on that. How can I do that better? It's a habit. These,
And yeah, and to build those habits, we have to see when we are the most at risk of violating this principle. We have to see we have to be able to reflect on the times that we've fallen down, that we've collapsed, that we've gone down the wrong path, so to speak. We've got to be able to look at ourselves with enough honesty to say that's a thing for me, and then we can be more attentive in those moments. See, here's one of them for me. When we have these big opening moments, these moments of like feeling like we've resolved something that's been a really big point of tension,
mm-hmm.
and like we got to a place, especially when she feels ready to lay down her resistance and to move into a more free way of living around whatever the thing is that was causing tension.
Mm-hmm.
If that's a place where I've already kind of gotten to, where I'm
Mm-hmm.
already feeling more free inside myself,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been with her being in all this tension, and then she's like, okay, I'm ready.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready
Mm-hmm.
to let this go, to move on. That's where I tend to cause the problems or to break the momentum, because I'm like, great, finally, let's go, let's move on with life. And like, now
Right.
we can live, like, all of this is all good now.
Right.
And she's like, I just got here. And I'm like,
Right.
I've been living here for a year. I've been waiting for
Right.
this. Let's go, like,
Right.
enjoy it.
Right.
And so I break the momentum when I don't have the patience with her integrating her own openings.
Well said. That's very
That's
true.
one of my moments that I have to be aware of for myself. And I'm recognizing very well in the last couple of weeks this about myself, that when she has a big opening, I'm like, yeah, let's hold this ground. Like, we worked real hard to get here.
Right. Right.
Like, okay, I don't have to be afraid that she's going to lose what it is that we have gained, or what it is that how far we've come. I need to trust her more fully, that if she got here, she meant it, and this is where she wants to stay, and give her the patience to continue to integrate it.
Mm-hmm.
And if so, when I can see this about myself now, that I can see this much better
Mm-hmm.
because of what we've been through the last couple of weeks, the next time she has a big opening experience, I'm going to slow down and go, all right, let's not do that again.
Yeah. No, I think
Next week. Like, wait a week before I share my opinions.
yeah, I know. I think you've said something really wise right there, that patience with her in a new space is when she feels that and she feels you easing into that, boy, does it let her nervous system feel like she was okay as she was before. If she feels from you that this whole time that you've been helping her, that you finally got there, it sort of disavows all the work that you were doing prior. She's like, what? You mean you weren't as patient as you were pretending to be? It feels like a performance. It feels like you're faking it. But if she can feel that the patience that you've expressed along the way, that you're continuing to feel that, it just cements whatever that new thing is, and then feels that. And I feel like you do that well.
The other thing that we can do when we are able to stay present with what she's feeling and what she's experiencing, when we can build that habit, we can then really learn from it. Like, actually, it makes us a better leader, because
Correct.
we can see and really start to notice what's going on inside of her. And what is it that led to her having this triggered response? As soon as I get triggered too,
Mm-hmm.
and now we're engaging in, like, the trigger battle, like I was talking about earlier, where we're both making it about ourselves and digging in our heels.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can't actually learn about what happened here, so that I can help, in the next week thing, or when I'm going to try to figure out how to make this experience, this situation better. In order for me to be able to do that, I have to actually be able to figure out what the fuck is going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't do that if I'm making it about myself. I have to be able to be there, really fully listening and learning. And this is why we talk about her emotions being information.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't a threat, they're information. They are really valuable to help you make her life and the relationship better, when you can understand what it is that she's experiencing.
That's a really good point, and I think it goes along with something that we've talked to both about. But understanding, for example, like her cycle, and understanding maybe she's in the luteal phase, maybe towards the end of the luteal phase. Maybe that's part of it. There's a context that you can begin to understand. It's more than whatever the feelings that are happening at that moment. If you start registering, oh, what led up to this? That's an example of it, but there's many other examples. Maybe it's something to do with food or sleep, or it's some person in her life that repeatedly is boundary. She's having an issue with boundaries with that person, or some family member, or
Mm-hmm.
something like. So there is. It's not to say that when we are holding these spaces that we are oblivious to what's happening. It's not like we don't pay attention. We're paying attention, we do inquire. There is questions that sometimes are necessary to follow up. There is details that are necessary to learn so that we can then better hold her and potentially lead her in a space in a different kind of way. And sometimes it's just often is it can I just her she will come up with her own solution. She will come up with her own way to navigate this and find that if she can get out of that triggered state, if I can help Rachel to not be in a triggered state, she's more than capable of often doing this, but often she needs to be allowed to go to the triggered state because she's feeling a triggered state, but she's not expressing that. So her body shuts down a little bit. And that does a lot of damage to it. Can she feel it a little bit more? So it's not a repressed, it can be a little bit more expressive and then kind of work its way out. And it brings up this point of paradox that we've talked about. I think is really interesting that you were just mentioning is sometimes, it's on the one hand, I say, can they feel free to bring, can she feel free to bring whatever she's feeling and to receive that is not necessarily a negative thing, but as a compliment or as a positive thing. And that as she brings more of that, to keep receiving that maybe you're doing an even better job, or you are doing even a better job of holding her so she feels safe. Over time, that will shift. And I do believe there will be less of the certain types of storms that are being brought there. There may be other storms that are coming, but there is a lessening. So that's another paradox. When we say there's more, there's also less.
Well, our experience is evidence of the fact that there are less.
Mm-hmm.
We've been doing this, like this particular dance here that we're talking about. We've been consciously engaged in this work for at least 3 years now. Really, really sloppy at the beginning because we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't have anyone we were learning from. We kind of figured all this crap out on our own on the fly. So we did it very sloppily and very poorly, frankly, at the beginning. I did it very poorly, but I learned from it and have continued to get better. And the storms are less and they're less intense. They change because what happens is some of these storms roll through and it gets sunny again and that storm is gone.
Right.
But then what happens is now she's living in this new sunny world where that storm has passed. And now another one that you couldn't even see before, something deeper down in her psyche, something deeper down in her programming, conditioning from an even earlier part of her life, or belief systems that are even more deeply entrenched to the point that she can't even see that she's living in them. Now those can start to come to the surface. Now those storms are going to come up. And by continuing to be with these, we every single time, and we let them roll through instead of resisting them, then we're helping her come deeper and deeper and deeper down into her authenticity, closer to being just in flow with the universe, with God on a moment-to-moment basis, without all of the emotional garbage and the conditioning and the programming and the beliefs and the triggers and all of that causing resistance to that flow.
Yeah. And, that's interesting. Part of what my experience has been too is that the storms come in and they're more intense, but they pass quicker. So there's an intensity, things getting brought up, feeling it, expressing it, and then we move through it. And as I'm able to hold on to that and hold that momentum and still hold the line and not get in a reactive state, it moves through. One of the things that I've had to deal with, and I've spoken about this, is these moments where I say these pivotal moments. I have allowed some of these pivotal moments. The reason why I'm passionately talking about this, I've done so poorly at it that there's been some pivotal moments that have caused months of unraveling, where in a pivotal moment, I showed up in a reactive way, in a way that was not supportive or not helpful, and was triggered by her trigger and said something that shut her down. and led to months where she didn't feel like she could speak about that topic again. This happened earlier this year where I reacted in a way that was pretty harsh about something, and it shut her down where she felt like she couldn't say that anymore. Her voice, because I would react. But it was in a very important part of our life. And because of that, we couldn't go to her truth around that. And her truth, she had a lot of wisdom and a lot to offer there in that regard. And she felt an energetic bracing where she wasn't allowed to be free with that. And it wasn't until I did more work on myself and I unraveled that and was able to look back and see, oh my God, that moment right there, in that pivotal moment, I shut you down. And that had months of an impact on you. And it wasn't until I saw that and I was able to unravel that and unwind that, that I was able to kind of move forward with that. And it had to do with me being reactive and me having a temper and me having a slam that can be intense. And as somebody she is naturally a submissive and surrendered. So she's going to, part of her, I'm going to say the downside, but one of the things to be alert to being with a woman who is naturally submissive is that when you come out with strong, assertive energy, whether it's from a higher self or a lower self, she's going to surrender to that. So she will surrender to your bullshit as much as surrender to your truth. And if you've got a true sub with you, it's on you, buddy. And this is what I've had to deal with, is that I have led her astray because of my insecurities and because of my anger. And I've had to come full circle to see that, oh my gosh, I've kept us back. I've held us back because of my lack of awareness of my own reactivity in those moments.
So I have one other thought on this topic that I want to share a little bit on and hear your feedback on before I hear whatever else you have to wrap it up. But it struck me too that there are these pivotal moments outside of the relationship that affect it.
Mm-hmm.
These other, how we are holding ourselves, not just with her, but how much are we holding ourselves to integrity in other parts of our life? How much, like, where am I making decisions to follow through on what I said I was going to do or not? Where am I doing something that is not in congruence with my values? Because these little things, they also affect our energy and how we feel about ourselves, how solid and true to ourselves that we're feeling. And then that does come back into the relationship. So for me, I've had to get really good with some of my patterns that have nothing to do inherently with the relationship, but they do because they impact how I'm doing inside of here. One example of that is I used to have, when I weighed almost 300 pounds years and years ago, I had really developed a pattern of, we'll just say, eating my feelings and, stuffing my face with way too much junk food. And I would always do it in hiding when I was alone, after she went to bed, when I was in the car or whatever. And that affected the relationship in a lot of different ways.
Right.
But now when I'm like, there are still times where I like feel that pull or that desire to go to food as a numbing thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I could do it, and I'm in good enough shape. I work out hard enough now that it wouldn't affect how my body looks. So I could get away with it, but I wouldn't get away with it because it would impact how I felt about me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to hold myself to standards in all parts of my life if I want to be strong enough, because this is building the inner strength to be able to do all this other shit we're talking about here. It's, can you do it when no one's looking? Who are you when you're in private? Who are you when you're in secret?
Well said. I think that I love that you brought that up. I feel like that's a really, really important point. I mean, it's sort of obvious, but it's not obvious. I mean, we're talking about it in regard to the relationship, but what if every moment that there's an opportunity to make a choice Where are we living in integrity, or are we living out of our alignment of these values? That's as important when she's not there
Mm-hmm.
as much as it is when she is there. In some ways, it's even more important because the times when she's not there, that's the foundation, that's the soil, that's the part of the house you don't see. Those are the things that nobody knows you're doing. You can get away with it, but can we build these habits so that that's where the habits get built? The habit gets built when no one's there. I remember reading someone said that your religion is what you do when no one's looking. That's it's when you have a very hard moment and no one's looking. What's going on inside of your thinking? How are you thinking about things? How are we feeling about things? What's the habit of thought? And how much are we living out our own fears and living from a place of fear or proving or all these energies that become, when they become manifest, become problematic? Are we doing that in our own thinking? And how much can we go through and do an inventory, the self check, all the practices that we've talked about? How can we do that even more so as that these private moments, they are where the habits get built for the public moments with her.
Yep.
Well
And that
said.
goes also back to what was our second episode about putting pressure on ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't mean you have to put pressure on yourself to be perfect. This doesn't mean you have to expect perfection out of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It means you are putting in effort to be the best that you can.
Mm-hmm.
And there is nothing that gets worse by you trying to get better,
Mm-hmm.
but nothing gets better by being forceful or putting pressure on yourself or applying self-hatred as a motivation for improvement. That
Mm-hmm.
doesn't help anything.
Mm-hmm.
So there's compassion and understanding for yourself and some patience with yourself as you figure out how you got so fucked up in the first place, rather than just hating on yourself for being so fucked up.
Right. There's a
We're all fucked up, and we all have space that we need to grow. So can you just accept that and then work on it a little bit today? Be a
and
little
it,
better.
and one of the big things that I keeps coming back to me, but the places that we're fucked up, these are the seeds of our gifts. These are the things that we're going to be able to help others with. And so if we see them and we're aware of them, when we all of a sudden become alert to things about ourselves that we're not liking, instead of bemoaning that and just wanting to push that aside, can we lean into it, show some inquiry into it? Can we hold ourselves in those places? Can we be gentle with ourselves? Can we be compassionate? That's the beginning places for real, true transformation. And that's where we can make progress to become a different person. But it's only through becoming aware of the places that we don't like. And she's the best seeker of that. She's literally got a magnet that will find that.
Yep. Yeah. And that is the unfortunate reality that it is always through our pain that we find our freedom.
Mm-hmm.
It's not avoidance of pain. It's not trying to figure out how to deal with it. It's not trying to, it's through confronting it, facing it, feeling it, admitting when we're wrong. It's on the other side of the things that we don't like about ourselves that we get to live in freedom, to be the most helpful to her, to other people, to the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I have both been through our own shit individually. And I'd like to think that that's why we are able to sit here and talk openly and vulnerably about the places where we've made mistakes
Mm-hmm.
and where we've messed up. And, I hope this can continue to be an example for other men of the strength that exists in working on yourself and on caring enough about yourself to be better.
Mm-hmm. Truth. And that care, it again goes back to gentleness and a paradox of that, because the strength comes from being gentle at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff again as always today, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate you.